Well, despite the Fed's concerns, Yellen also avoided criticizing Trump's policies outright. While some investors are championing the Trump bump on the markets, others aren't so sure that he'll be good for the economy in the long term. For more on this, our correspondent Daniel Rinches joins me on set. Welcome, Daniel.
Good to be with you.
So a lot of people are wondering, there was a lot of will they, won't they throughout the year. So what's changed today with the Federal Reserve's decision?
Well, in a sense, the decision itself hasn't changed anything because everyone expected the quarter-point rise to be between 0.5 and 0.75% on the federal funds rate. But what has changed and what's given the bull market a bit of a kick in the gut is the fact that what the officials do is they take an average of their consideration about what will happen next year, the year after. And for next year, as opposed to 3 months ago, they think there are probably going to be 3 rate rises instead of the 2 that they'd predicted before. Now, Janet Yellen says don't read too much into that at the moment because she describes what she calls a cloud of uncertainty over a Trump administration. But she admitted that some of the officials had tried to factor in some of what they called the fiscal stimulus impacts of Trump, which basically means the infrastructure plans and the plans to cut corporate taxes. So that puts more money in people's pockets and potentially gives more inflation, and that's what could give rise to an extra rate hike next year.
Now, Janet Yellen was pushed hard on how she was factoring in Trump's plans. Did she have a view on Trump's fiscal stimulus?
Not directly. I mean, it would be foolish of her to become too political, especially after what Trump said about the Fed in the past. But that being said, there were some fascinating details I'd like to try to dig into. Firstly, she emphasized the fact that if you are basically, at the moment, there's no real need for a great amount of fiscal stimulus because according to the Fed's mandate, their unemployment levels are at where they need to be. That being said, she said if you were spending on fiscal stimulus of some kind, what you need to focus on is productivity growth. In other words, getting bang for your buck. And how do you do that? Well, to get the US economy to be more competitive, you need it to be more productive, and that means efficiency and innovation. And she said if you're going to spend, you basically need to target things that will help that, which is education and trying to make sure that companies are incentivized to produce the best products possible. So that's the issue there. And I think the implication is that if you have across-the-board spending on things like infrastructure, then you may not be putting the money where it's best used.
So in terms of that then, what impact do higher interest rates have on government debt going forward?
Well, let's take it broader because globally, emerging markets, some of them, as you know, have been struggling a lot, especially those that have been reliant on commodities. Now, some of them have managed their economies very well during this period, but others have taken out a lot of dollar-denominated debt. So that means they have more servicing costs. But on top of that, because their own currencies have taken such a hit, it costs a lot more for them to pay out to get to the dollar amount that they need to pay off that debt. So there is an amplification effect. But even here in the United States, there are some big questions ahead, Rochelle, about this. So I've been looking at a report by the Committee for a Responsible Budget, which is bipartisan. Republicans and Democrats support it. They're suggesting that by 2026, the cost of debt servicing based on current plans will be an astonishing $712 billion a year, which is almost going to be the same as the defense budget, which is the highest budget amount. So every other government department will spend less than the cost of servicing the debt. Now, on top of that, if you're factoring in what Trump's plans are for something like $6 trillion of spending, that could add an extra between $800 billion and $2.5 trillion to that cost of debt servicing. That's an astonishingly high amount. But before I go, I just want to point out that Paul Ryan has made the point today that American corporate tax is not competitive, and that if they have across-the-board ways in which they can target that and bring a lot of that corporate money back into the United States, then they could be onto a winner. But there are lots of unknowns in the situation at the moment. I think that's reflected in Yellen's sort of inability really to give us some clear signals.
Well, certainly some big decisions ahead. Thank you so much. Daniel Rinches there for us.